Tom, in Tuscaloosa, that should be a national holiday. They want to get ready for recruiting. Good morning. How you doing?
Morning, Tom.
I'm doing great. You're absolutely right. It could be 7 straight years for the number one class for Alabama. No one's ever come close to that, and they're battling Ohio State right now for the number one spot.
Talk about Alabama's recruiting class. They got obviously several guys on campus already, which is kind of a good deal for those kids. They go ahead and can get started. A lot of people want to talk about the quarterback from Hawaii, Tua. I won't try to pronounce his last name, but you got people here. I guess the backup quarterback's always the most popular guy, thinking that he could maybe start over Jalen Hurts next year. But just talk about Tua and what you've seen of him and what kind of player Alabama's getting.
Yeah, I went out to see him in Hawaii, and then he was on our television show last year, and we had him. He's got a great personality. He's the same high school as Marcus Mariota, and maybe an inch or two shorter, but same kind of athletic ability. He can run and throw. He's a passer. He's a smart kid. He picks things up quickly. So he is the type of guy that could step in as a freshman and do a very good job, particularly when you're surrounded with such great talent that Alabama will be surrounded with next year. So Tua is definitely capable of that. You know, most freshmen would benefit from a red shirt here, but I do believe that Tua certainly has the capability, and he's a good, solid-looking kid, so he can take a pounding if he decides to tuck and run. Another major catch for Alabama, and because he's from Hawaii, he didn't get the kind of national publicity that a lot of the other quarterbacks got, but he's just as talented.
Dad?
How would it affect Alabama's recruiting with two excellent recruiters who had a real personal relationship with the players they were recruiting, are going to Oregon and Arizona State? Is that a factor? You know,
it normally would be with any school except for Alabama, mainly because Nick Saban is really the reason why the recruiting is so great. Nick kind of develops the coaches, and if you notice, there's been interchangeable parts coaching-wise for the past several years, and they still wind up with a number one class. So the only constant has been Nick Saban, and that's all you really need. I mean, he makes sure that these coaches do their job recruiting-wise. If they don't, they'll be out within a year or so, and I think they get the message, too. So there's a lot of excellent recruiting with all 9 coaches, and like I said, they're interchangeable because he brings in new guys, and they're great recruiters, too. Steve Sarkisian is as good a recruiter as Lane Kiffin, and that goes on and on. Whoever replaces the other guy is just as good. So, like I said, the only constant is Nick Saban. That's all they really need.
Alabama, has changed a little bit with Nick Saban and gone to more national recruiting. You see them taking guys in California, up in the New York area. I think last year alone, they only signed 3 or 4 kids in the state of Alabama. Have you seen that change? Are other schools, I guess Ohio State, are they going national too? Do you see these top brand schools being able to recruit nationally better now?
Yeah, I just did a radio show in Columbus, Ohio. We were talking about that. Ohio State, the majority of their top players are from out of state, and they go after the premier players. Pete Carroll used to tell me that he goes after number one draft choices around the whole country, and it worked for him, and that's what Nick Saban's doing too. So, the fans will not complain as long as you win, that you're not taking a lot of in-state ball players, although this year Alabama's taking a few. But for the most part, the great players, the number one player in the country is from California. They got the number one player from Kentucky. They got some outstanding guys from Georgia, especially Xavier McKinney. And Dylan Moses is from Louisiana via IMG Academy in Florida. So if you look at their top guys, a lot of them are coming in. One from Hawaii, Banderas Collin from Florida. So you're right. A good number, Alex Leatherwood from Florida. So you got to recruit nationally. If you're Alabama, you go after the best players regardless of where they're from.
We're talking with Tom Lemming, CBS Sports Network recruiting expert. Tom, I'll ask you about 3 guys here. Alabama is trying to finish up. Aubrey Solomon, Henry Ruggs, and LeBron Ray. I just wanted to hear what you're hearing on the latest on those 3 guys.
I just figured they were going to get LeBron Ray because when I met him up in the northern part of the state back a year ago, he told me he grew up as an Alabama fan. Solomon, Alabama is battling Michigan. Michigan had him committed for a long time, and then they had the football of him thanking him for coming up to their barbecue, even though he didn't go up there, and misspelling his name, so he was upset about that. who is this? So I think it's still a Georgia, Michigan. I mean, Alabama, Michigan, with Georgia slightly still in the race.
Yeah,
who was the third player again?
The other kid was Henry Ruggs down in Montgomery. He's really kind of busted on the national scene here lately. His mama likes Alabama, and these kids usually go where mama likes. So I think Alabama's in good shape. I want to get your take on it.
I think so, too. I was in Montgomery visiting all the top juniors about a couple of months ago, and we were over at Ruggs School, and at that time he was definitely leaning to Alabama. And normally they all make a 360. They start with one school, they go visit it and flirt with everyone else, and they eventually wind up the school they originally liked, unless that school screws up. So I think Alabama will get it.
That.
It seems like just outside looking in that Alabama and LSU are sort of ruling the West, and Georgia is ruling the East. If that's you can tell me if that's correct or incorrect, but if that is correct, are we going to continue to see the SEC football struggle a little bit besides those three teams?
It could happen. Florida's not having a great year. Vanderbilt is not. Kentucky is not. Ole Miss and Mississippi State are struggling. So Arkansas is struggling. So it could happen. When you're looking at the conference, it's the powerhouses are gaining a lot of traction. Auburn's doing good. Not great, but very good. So they're still in the mix, but Alabama's dominating everybody. Georgia's right behind them. And I think with Ed Orgeron at LSU, they're always going to recruit well. He recruited very well at Ole Miss, and I think it didn't work out for him, but he had a lot of talent at Ole Miss that Houston Nutt took advantage of for a couple of years before the talent drop-off happened. So I do believe that right now it's Alabama, Georgia, LSU dominating the whole scene. Tennessee, Auburn still doing okay, and the rest of the school struggling.
Okay.
We're talking with Tom Lemming with CBS Sports Network. Tom, explain to me Florida. That's the one I don't get. Jim McElwain seems to be a real personal guy, down to earth. He's at Florida, so they have a great brand to sell there. But it seems like they are not excelling in recruiting. What's holding those guys back there?
You know what? I just spent the last week in Florida interviewing a lot of players, and I think it's not offering guys early. Alabama is the king of offering everyone around the country, over 200 players, and so is Ohio State and Michigan. And I think Florida gets beaten by Florida State and Miami when it comes to offering guys early. And the kids nowadays have a chip on their shoulder if the local school doesn't offer them right away, which is right or wrong. You got to kind of go with what the kids are thinking. And I think Florida's going to have to change. They're going to have to adjust their philosophy of waiting to offer ball players because it's hurt them. And right now the class is struggling. It's a good class, but not Florida standard type class. And they've got to change their philosophy and maybe change up a few assistant coaches who aren't doing the job because they don't want to fall too far behind in the division and against Florida State and Miami when it comes to recruiting.
Tom, I talked about this about a couple of months ago. If I go back the last 5 years and I pull the recruiting rankings across the country and who recruited 1 through 25, the SEC teams, Tennessee, LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss, all these guys are in the top 20 every single year. But in Dan and I's opinion, this year the SEC was about as bad as it's ever been. So what is causing that? If they're recruiting at such a high level where their classes are ranked high every year, but they're not playing well on the field, what's causing that? Are we missing on the rankings? Is the coaching not as good as it used to be? What's the reason for that?
I think they have so many good teams in the conference, they just beat the heck out of each other, and it kind of brings them down a little bit. Because when they go into the bowl games, they normally win those bowl games against other conferences. So they're still the dominant conference. Although it's starting to become a little bit top-heavy, what I've noticed. I mean, Alabama always recruits great. Georgia now, with Kirby Smart, is recruiting great. LSU with Orgeron. And Ole Miss is struggling, maybe with NCAA hanging over their head. Mississippi State has always kind of struggled. The surprising is Florida. Florida should always have great recruiting years, and they haven't done that lately. And I think Tennessee's always kind of done well, but not as well as they did when Phil Fulmer was head coach. So you can see a little bit of a change. And Kentucky and Vanderbilt still kind of bring up the rear. And Arkansas and A&M, and A&M has not recruited as well as we thought they did. You're right, because they've had a lot of transfers, if you notice. And I think that they're a sleeping giant also. But if Texas starts doing well, then A&M is going to struggle a little bit recruiting-wise because Texas is really the state school.
You got that?
I don't really have anything else, particularly. How much is Alabama? How much do they? The people that they hire, other people say they have so many people in the offices, and so many guys working in recruiting and so forth. I would assume that that's a really big effect because they're able to find out and know how good the guy is. Is that a real plus for Alabama?
A major plus because they get on top of the ball players quicker than any school in the country.
Yeah.
They've got a great behind the scenes, not only with seniors being recruited, but juniors, sophomores, freshmen. Alabama appears to be on every top player ahead of everyone else except possibly the local school in each part of the country. And that's a major advantage when you got a finalist like Alabama keep winning national titles or in like this year in the national title hunt and game. And then there's contact ball players earlier than sometimes the local schools do. A major victory for them because they seem to be in on every top player. If you look at the top 100 players, if Alabama's zeroed in on them, they're in on every single one of them. They're in at least the top 3 or 4 or 5 schools mentioned. And when you do that, you're always going to wind up with a great class. So I think it's well worth the money to pay a lot of people behind the scenes to keep working and have sort of like an NFL-type front office, and that's what Alabama has.
Last question, Tom. When all the chips are in on Wednesday, the faxes slow down. Will Alabama, will their class be ranked number 1 again this year?
Right now they're number 1, but it's not a clear-cut thing. Ohio State, Florida State has got a lot of scholarships still to give. They're in on a lot of players. It is USC. It's not even in the top 10 now, but they're starting to move, and they've got a lot of good ball players out on the West Coast still looking at them. But if I had a bet, I would bet on Alabama, but it's not as clear-cut as it's been the past few years. So I would say it's Ohio State, Alabama, USC, Florida State race right now. I think Georgia's also in the mix, but I don't know about how many scholarships they still have left.
Yeah, give us maybe 2 or 3 guys, the top guys that'll be making their decisions on Wednesday, and maybe who's it down to? Who are the top guys left out there that hadn't either already on campus somewhere or have already committed? Who are the top 2 or 3 guys for us to look for?
Well, I think Marvin Wilson's the number 1. He's the number 2 player in the country, defensive tackle. He's still got LSU, Ohio State, Florida State. Joseph Lewis, who's a Michael Irvin-type wide receiver. Looks like USC's going to wind up with him. Jerez Parks, who's got Florida State, Auburn, Florida. He's a linebacker out in Sebastian River. And Jeff Thomas, who tore up the Under Armour game as a wide receiver. I know Illinois is trying to keep him in state. Lovie Smith is, but he's got Oregon, Miami, and Louisville still after him. And those are and LeBron Ray, who you mentioned, is still a big-name guy out there. Aubrey Solomon. So there's Nico Collins from Alabama. So there's still some big-time ball players still out there, and it's all going to be decided in 2 days.
Well, Tom, we appreciate it very much. We look forward to watching you guys' show. I know you guys will have wall-to-wall coverage. There'll be a lot of interest coming out of this part of the country on who gets who, and thanks for taking time to be on with us.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Take care.